everyone. My name is Padmini Nidumolu, and I'm the co-founder of Lean and Agile for Women, an initiative to bring women across the world on a single platform where we can offer to each other and seek from each other in a psychologically safe space. And the premise of this organization is the stories that we are bringing, the platforms that we are bringing. If it inspires at least one woman out there, this effort is still worth it. As part of this organization, we set out to launch an initiative called LIA100 or Lean and Agile 100 last year, 2019. And the intent is to bring 100 incredible women across the world in Lean and Agile spaces, 100 among many who are contributing significantly in this space. So you can learn from their lessons and learn from their mistakes and get inspired by their thought process, because if we don't tell our own stories, nobody else will. And as part of this effort, today we have with us Dr. Stefanie Puckett from Germany. And thank you so much, Stefanie, for saying yes to chat with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I love your initiative.
Awesome. So Stefanie, what I'll do is I'll introduce you very briefly and we'll get right to the conversation. Okay, so Stefanie is a psychologist with a research background, and she worked and lived globally. She worked for several consulting companies, and she's currently a director and a principal consultant in a management position in regional and global roles for a global Fortune 500 company, and she owns her own business. Over the time, she worked with more than 500 leaders, conducted several hundred international workshops, seminars, trainings, coachings, and consulting projects. And she loves to write. She has written several books and more than 30 articles. Welcome, Stefanie, again. That's, I know, a very concise and a short bio about yourself. And there's so much to you, which we are very eager to kind of uncover. So, to begin with, can you share your journey into the Agile space? I know you're a psychologist and you're a researcher. What brought you into the Agile space?
Yeah, funny, you pick out the exact two key points. So I was working as a consultant, and I think it was about 3 years ago that my employer, which is still my current employer, had conducted a study for the Global Center of Digital Business Transformation. And the question in mind was, we heard about agile leadership was a big buzzword. It still is. And this study said, hold on, we need, if you want to work with it, we need to really have it specific. We need to translate it into competencies, into behaviors. And this study was something I took on when I joined the company and made it a little bit of my, the area I wanted to drive forward. And we had more and more clients at that time asking us, what's going on, agile leadership, do we have to change? We don't know what to do, help us. And that was so surprising or shocking to me, as you talk to leaders who are in the business for 15 years, 20 years. You have HR personnel who master their craft for 10, 15 years. And our clients were insecure. They didn't know what, this whole agile thing, where does that come from? What does it mean? And so I did like the approach we had taken, trying to demystify it and put it down to competencies. It's nothing new, really. It's a different frame. It's a different focus. So that's what I took on to help my clients discover their own strengths, their own ways of finding their agility in their leadership and their organization. At that time, then I started to experiment a little bit myself. I had a book project at that time, so I said, okay, from now on, I'm going to run it agile, and I did. I made my my own experience. My company started to apply some methods, and what really got me hooked on this topic of agility was when I got more familiar with the principles, with the processes. I thought that all sounds so familiar from decades of organizational psychology research. It's what we're preaching since decades, really. Give people control. You build the tasks around that the people can offer and want to do. So this angle was so empowering. It was so nice because I know, a lot of my colleagues, how hard it is and still is to get an ear from an organization saying, hey, we might need to modify the work a little bit. And now there's this big agile wave coming, over all of us, lightening some of the principles we try to preach for so long. So I think that's what really set me straight on the path.
I'm sorry, I think I was muted. I was saying, I'm so glad you did, because I think you contributed so much to the space. And you're such an established author, right? One of the books that you've written, I was looking at among many articles and books you've written, is the Agile Culture Code, if I'm not wrong, right? And I think it's about cracking the code of organizational agility.
Right.
I know it's definitely worth the read, but if you can sum it up as to what are the key enablers of organizational ability, and what is that culture code like that we all can kind of take away, what would that be?
Yeah, I think, writing is always is a journey, it's a learning. And I started my history, my whole career was really focused on leadership. And I kind of made a big shift here, seeing that with agile leadership, we get organizations far, but not where we need to get them to. If for agility to take off, we need to establish it. On the bottom, we need to establish it broadly and not, picking out some leaders who try to then install. So that's why I thought or started thinking from a psychological perspective, what do we need for each of us to be able to step up and make our mark in the organization? And this is why I choose the angle of organizational culture, which then I started, like you said, trying to decode it, trying to see, okay, looking at agile organizations or even agile projects within traditional organizations, how are they different? And what you find is, while agile companies do vary in structure and in governance, they do not vary that much in their culture. And
Yes.
I managed to identify 3 areas that I believe are common and needed to enable agility. One is transparency, that's pretty much self-explaining. This is
Yeah.
what agile working methods are about, being transparent, but it goes beyond that. Letting employees on each level of the organization really have access to information that matters, have a straight, direct line to see your customer and the customer needs, being able to observe the market for yourself, knowing what the competition is doing, but also transparency in terms of, I like feedback loops. This is what really gives you transparency, because you understand, hey, what I'm doing or what I maybe do a little different today, how is that going to impact the ones that are relying on my work or impacted by my work. And at the same time, this kind of transparency gives you a sense of meaning of
Yeah.
your work. You understand people appreciate it. What difference do I make with my work? So that is transparency, and that is transparency of information and data externally, internally, transparency of work results. So I know, and I know the impact I'm having, I can measure it and help use it to self-steer, self-correct myself. This is transparency. Then the second dimension, I call it the tech model, by the way. So it's transparency, it's empowerment, it's collaboration. And empowerment, again, it's pretty self-explanatory. It starts off having your team self-manage, but that to me is the beginning of organizational agility, because self-management is nice and it keeps the leaders let's say hands-free as when the team manages itself. But within a team, you have so much competency, you have such an in-depth knowledge of what's going on with their work, but also with their customers. So you need to liberate it and letting teams self-steer, which means also allowing them to set their own targets, to explore different ways to achieve the company targets and to follow up with the vision. Let them be creative. Let them not only execute and plan and manage themselves, but to really, start to be an entrepreneur within the company. That is empowerment. And the third component is collaboration, which simply gets to the fact we can, have all the transparency and empowerment we want. We won't achieve our goals if we do not collaborate, lift each other up, share our knowledge, learn from each other, building a culture. I liked what you said, having also a safe space where we can learn and grow together as a company. That is the essence, if you want to become an agile company, which to me is also a learning company, this is what you need. You need total flexibility. You need the same equal footing throughout the organization of people working together and people working in networks, so they actually can reach out. They can start building their own base of influence to get their ideas through and so on. So that is the tech model. I basically wrote this book about.
Yeah, no, that's I think so profound. And those are probably the most toughest things to achieve, right? There's a
Yeah,
reason why there are
sure.
so many coaches.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty much everyone agrees on that. If you look in literature or if you look at reviews or experiences, culture is the biggest hurdle
Yes.
to go through agility if you are in a traditional setting. But at the
Yeah.
same time, and that's what's so motivating for me, it's also the biggest lever. If we can, work on the way we're working together and growing together, then structures may not matter as much as we think they are. Even hierarchy.
Yeah.
If we have a truly agile culture set up and I have a boss or boss, that's fine. That can be even more empowering. We don't always have to change the whole organization to
Yeah.
achieve agility.
True. True. And I think cracking that code is unique to each organization, because I think there is not one equation or code for all organizations, obviously. So I
It'd be
think,
great if we had the blueprint and we just go ahead and stamp it on. Yeah, that doesn't work. However, you see, there is a shared logic, and I think that's valuable to, of course, you got to look at each organization, but you do have some sort of a shared logic and say, okay, this is how, on the psychological level, we can click the parts and pieces together to enable agility. And then, of course, the organization has to build their own culture blueprint. It certainly has to.
yeah.
Things are maybe one aspect is more important than the other, and aspects mean different things to different organizations.
Right.
Like risk taking. It's different for a pharmaceutical
Yeah.
company or a
Yeah.
bank than it is, for a startup in Silicon Valley. So yeah, it has to be really individual. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we really call it the North Star, right? Every company has their own North Star and their own criteria of success. So what's the formula for one company doesn't necessarily apply to
Right.
every
Yeah.
company. So
Like
that makes a
strategy.
lot of sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I think what you just mentioned about the three pillars are enablers, and I think it applies differently to different organizations, but those are very profound.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing. I'd like to ask you about the leadership aspect. You've done so much research, and you've written books on leadership, agile leadership, and that is one of the topics at Lean and Agile, which is widely spoken. And we look at the gender diversity a lot, as you know, in this organization, and we talk about what does it take to develop more female leaders, women leaders, right? And that is part one of what I would like to know. And the other part is, what are some of the barriers, both internal and external, that prevents more women leaders from shaping up, from coming up, into this community?
Mhm. Yeah, those are great questions. So when I go back to the research we did about trying to figure out what are the real core competencies for agile leadership, we or the perspective we took is from leadership theories, psychological approaches to leadership, and to be fair, agile leadership is not a completely new thing. It's not a completely different thing to what we know about leadership. However, there's tweaks here and there. And I think this is where the chances are and the challenges are for leaders, or for women leaders, to establish themselves in the workforce. One point that we identified as a key component is, and it sounds odd, but just hear me out, it's humility as a leadership quality.
Oh,
And I mean, it is picking up here and there. You hear more about humble leadership. In this context, it basically is, if you want to empower your organization to be fast, to be nimble, to be smart and proactive, you gotta lift them up. You cannot look down on them and impose your limited ideas. Fields are too complex for that. You no longer have the answer as a leader. So humility in that regard means I gotta step back. I gotta get other people in the boat. I gotta listen. And I also have to listen to feedback. My employees might need a different kind of leadership from me in a different situation. So humility is something that is not traditionally what we see in leaders. This is not how people climbed up the corporate ladder so far. You need to get your elbows out. You need to be loud. You're just a tiny bit. You got to set yourself in the right spotlight in order to be seen and promoted, and for people to follow you and believe in you. And this is changing. We start believing in leaders not who tell us which way to go, but who enable us to find out ourselves which direction to take, who inspire us. And I think that women have a little more of a natural tendency to not put ourselves too much in the spotlight, but rather, stay in the background, be happy if we can coach others. And I think this is a key quality we need right now to really establish leadership in the agile place. Yeah, it's difficult because you see the conflict. What am I supposed to do as a woman now? Go and show off my humility? Doesn't go with humility. So it's delicate. But what I hope, what it brings us, is that this male dominated picture of the all-knowing and all-deciding leader, we got to put this to the past. And this opens up the stage for people who may not have considered leadership. Now, some of the best leaders I worked with in the past, of the women leaders, they never aspired to become leaders because they're not dominant. They never did strive for power. They just wanted to have an impact and help others have an impact. And I think, yet today, with the agile mindset, we're much more open to this kind of leadership, and this kind of leadership is much more promoted. So I feel like this is one of the doors we can now push open as women and really enter the stage.
wow. That is truly encouraging and inspiring. Oh, that's great. And then if you have to talk about what are some of the barriers or what withholds us as women, and we could have all the competencies, we could have all the abilities to be leaders, but there is something which pulls us back from aspiring for those positions, or even putting ourselves out there, saying, hey, I could be considered, I am an eligible candidate, consider me. Right. And some of these are internal dialogues, right? When we talk to women, we know that they just talk to themselves. It's not that somebody else is discouraging them, or there could be external barriers. It could be organizational, structural. What do you think are some of those internal barriers, and particularly, how can we address them?
Yeah, difficult question. I mean, what we always had and still have are, of course, organizational aspects of how do we design a job? What do we, how flexible are we in remote work? And COVID is changing us here, which I think is a positive effect. Women are more often in the situation that we have to somehow balance. We have our children, we do have a family, we might have parents we need to take care of. So the same is true for men, no question, but women are let's say, more likely to be, yeah, hold responsible, or also would like to take this responsibility. So I
Yeah.
think this is a very straightforward aspect to offer flexible job arrangements, job sharing, part-time, remote, work from home, to just be more flexible to accommodate, you know, women's needs in our different stages of life. I think this is one thing that didn't change. And the other big topic is, you put it in the right term. What do we do to put ourselves forward, to basically nominate ourselves? We don't do that. We just can't. And
Yeah.
it's not something females are taught to do. You know, as you know, starting from being a little girl, I've never heard, yeah, go get it. I've never heard that. However, I did hear, you know, parents teach their little boy, you know, go get her, go get them. So I think here is a key point, and that's why I really appreciate your initiative so much and think it's so spot on.
You.
Is, if we're too shy to put ourselves forward, we need the lady on the other end. We need, you know, we need our network to help each other, you know, help each other up. I
Yeah.
think that's very important, and that can be internal and external. And you know, but I work with clients, for example. I mean, you hear it here and there, having special initiatives like women leadership classes and so on. I'm not sure if that's the right way to go, because women don't need special care. We don't need more training than men do. We just need to be allowed and have the confidence to try go for those positions.
Yeah.
Um, it's not an easy answer I could give to that.
Yeah. It's
Maybe I
definitely
can,
not straightforward. Yeah.
yeah, but let me share personal experience.
Sure.
Um, I started working as a consultant when I was 24. So not only a woman, but also a young woman. Being in, you know, in organizations, trying to tell senior leaders which way they might want to change, or yeah. And you can imagine that wasn't received, you know, greatly in all places I went to, in Germany, Switzerland. The US is a little more progressive in this manner. However, what helped me and what opened the door to, you know, board meetings, etc., and for me to coach even senior leaders, was that I'm a psychologist. And why is that? That is because I'm not competing with them in their fields. I'm coming from a different angle, and they were able to respect me in this role as a psychologist. It's sad, but it is what helped me get my foot in the door, often. But I know not all of us are, you know, psychologists or sociologists or biologists, you know, entering the agile field. Some of us are simply software developers, like,
Sure.
you know, most men you might encounter in these spaces. But I would still like, or I still learn for myself, what helps you is to find your individual angle, find what makes you special, what gives you a unique perspective, an experience you made, your expert knowledge, or could be your personality that adds something unique to the mix. And this is what helped me to gain confidence. Put this forward. You know, this is how you can ask respect in that matter, and people will then, you know, see, okay, there's more to that person, sure, but it helps you, or it helped my confidence to know I have a unique angle I can add to the mix. And I would encourage, you know, all of us to just be confident and think, what is it that I really uniquely bring in? And I'm sure every single one has an answer here.
That was so beautifully put, Stephanie. I really appreciate that. And I love the fact that you mentioned let's nominate ourselves, right? And the confidence to nominate yourself, and also kind of believing that you're enough, because you can always pursue excellence and more credentials and more experience. Always, I think all of us are on that path, continuous learning. But at some point, you've got to believe that you have it within you to take that next plunge, right? Nominate yourself. And what's the worst that could happen? Right? You know, you could be rejected, but at least you've tried. You have
Right.
inched forward. I really, really love that. And also, I think the fact that find your unique um, value
Mhm.
that you bring to the table. Just like you found you're a psychologist and you were not competing with them, that kind of put yourself, in a different bucket. But you found that unique trait about yourself or the value proposition that you bring to the table. And as you said, I think all of us do. All of us have that. You just need
Right.
to identify that, accentuate that, and make that as our lever, as our leverage, so we can propel
Yeah.
forward.
Another example is listening. I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of women pay more attention to closely listening to what's going on and to what your opponent has to say. And this is one of those secret strengths. This can catapult you ahead if you believe in yourself. Listening is a strength that goes back to what changed in leadership. And I think that, if you're just a good listener and you're open, reflective, and able to learn, in some circumstances that's all you need to really push yourself forward, but we need to get that confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very, very valuable. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I think that kind of cemented some of the barriers that most of us carry.
Mhm.
So thank you. Thank you. All right. So as we wrap up, then, is there a message that you want to give to the community? It could be a word, it could be, just a phrase, a sentence, something that you live by.
Oh, that's big. I'm not ready for that. That
Or
much.
it could be anything that has inspired you, maybe.
I think what really helped me is to try to make something your own. If you're confronted with new topics or fields you haven't been into, or let's say women who take an interest in the agile field, go ahead and acquire knowledge. Wherever you start from, knowledge is going to give you a base you stand on. Acquire knowledge, and the second thing is experiment. Try it out. Make play with it. Try to find your own yeah individual and unique way how principles apply to you or how methods can add value in your environment. I think gather knowledge and experiment with it. This is how we develop, or it also helped me to really develop a base I can stand on and move from there.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. So, trust in the knowledge and iterate, right? Through
Right.
experimentation.
Absolutely.
Love that.
And you can
Thank
fail.
you, Stephanie. This was very profound. And I think we all can learn so much from your own experience and your personal sightings that you just shared with us about leadership and, just believing that you're enough.
Right.
Thank you
Well,
so
thank you. The discussion was inspiring to me too. It was great. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Awesome. And I look forward to, catching hold of some of your books and, add them to my library and reading list soon. Really
Great.
looking forward to that.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.